for need. So during the experiences that I had in the past few years, looking for funding is a very creative and individual process. That's how I feel about it. So there's always funding for what you want. It's just a matter of creating the right words and right space to find what can work out for your need. So I give you an example. So I was working with this a non-for-profit organization, a daycare, and they were looking for a dishwasher because their dishwasher stopped working and they needed a certain type of dishwasher, which was industrial type or more like a commercial type, so a larger one to be able to pass the regulation for their center. So it was quite critical to find around $5,000 to $7,000 for that specific, machine. So, so where do you look for a dishwasher, like for a fund for a dishwasher? So, we ended up, we didn't like really search for dishwasher as a word, but what we looked for is like, education funding that would be used for like equipment or tools. Or, we also looked at like daycares specifically and the fundings that are available for daycares. And then we were able to find a specific foundation that they're providing up to $5,000 for certain, equipment as long as it improves the conditions of, the health condition for the staff and for the, attendees in the school, or in the daycare. So finally, we could actually apply with them, and we got the funding. So it's another example. So this was in like maybe a smaller non-governmental funding, but for governmental funding. So while ago, we were looking for some funding to get a greenhouse in one of the First Nation communities. And we were able to, so we didn't really look again for like, greenhouse. We didn't even look at like, we looked at certain fundings around food, but we didn't find anything that fund that a specific greenhouse for the community. So we ended up applying through climate change. There's a funding through federal government climate change and health adaptation program that also looks at like a food and food sovereignty and food security in different communities, First Nation communities. So, so we were able to actually get the funding through climate change. So I also heard there were some, participants in the last session that they said they're looking for funding for example, like men for shelters. So again, if you're just looking, using words such as like shelters or, shelters for men or things like that, we need to kind of really be creative in a way. So maybe we have to put a different word such as mental health, such as housing, and then go over all those fundings and see if there is one of those that actually matches with, and we are eligible for it and matches with our, our organization, our community, and we can actually apply for. So I think that's one of the maybe most helpful, experiences that I had, because I had the same issue when I started looking for fundings, and I was just using 3-4 words, and then I wasn't able to get anything or find anything, or they were either expired. But then after a while, I figured that, yeah, it's like, just changing a little word here and there that can actually make a big difference. So that's one question. I'd like to hear your comments about this. But I'm moving to the next question, as the chat section is open, so you can always like include your suggestions and comments. Another question I have is, if I don't have a charitable organization number, can they apply for funding? So you usually have a charity number. There are different type of organizations. So we have for-profit organizations, and then we have non-for-profit organizations. When you are a non-for-profit organization, such as it could be a school, it could be a health center, you usually can apply for a charity number. But if you're not, you can't. But there are a lot of other ways that you can, work with this. One is if you have a project that's related, for example, you're looking for land-based funding and you can work with a school in your community, then you can actually apply through a school. So what usually this organization is all about and asking for, for you to be either like, an organization or have a charity number. It's all about to make sure the money goes through, an organization and they have the capacity to distribute the funding to different people or different people to different part of the community. So that is the main reason that they ask for having a charity number. So make sure that you have the capacity to distribute the funding for the things that you want to create in your community or organization. So yeah, so not all the fundings are looking for non-for-profits or charities. If they do, there's still ways that you can work with, such as connecting to those organizations or those charities within like your community that can help you reach that funding. Okay. And then, all right, let's see what other questions. So there was one question about if we work with our First Nation, who else should we work with to ensure we are not overlapping finance? So what I understand is like you're wanting to make sure you're applying for certain funding, and then there's another, organization or some other, individual within your community that applies for same type of funding. If I understand this right, and this is what you meant by the question, I think like, again, this is a very common question. It's very important to have very good relationship within your community or organization to know what funding has been allocated to your community or, or they applied for. If you don't have that, you can always, let's say you're looking for funding related to mental health. You can always go to your health center in your community and ask and say, have you applied for this funding? Do you have anything that actually, any kind of program that provides this type of support or provides this type of services to the community? So it's all about networking and sharing what you're about to apply for. I also found that very helpful in a way that is a way to, to find resources for your project, to find people that are like-minded. The more people that are like-minded and are looking for certain type of changes in the community or organization we have, the more creativity is there, right? And the more diversity is there. So if you can't really think of any other possible funding, they might come up with an ideas, or they might know someone within certain network that can, direct you to that funding. So let's say, okay. Another question I have, which is quite common, is are reserve-based proposals eligible for provincial funds? And if the chief and council or band councils require a charitable number? No. As long as I know, first, like, no is the answer to the second part. So no, you don't need a charitable number as an Indigenous government. Band and councils are considered governments. So you have your own authority, and you don't really need any type of other organization. And you have ways to channel any funding. So you don't really need any organization, non-for-profit, for-profit, or anyone else to actually be able to channel those fundings. So as long as you're eligible for the funding as a First Nation community, you can reach that funding. And then, yes, you are also eligible for provincial funds. I'm not, I personally haven't applied for provincial funds, but I know that there are areas that provincial government is specifically taking care of, like health and education, that might have certain, funding available for First Nation communities. So I guess so far that is it. So if any other question, I'll take a look at it a little later. But for now, I'd like to share a screen. What we're gonna have for the next session. And please keep the conversation going. I will get to those chats at possibly at the end of this session. We are going to cover quite a bit in this part of the session. We are looking at, okay, so you have an idea, you found your the funding that might work for you. Now, how do you actually fill your application form, and where do you go from here? So, all right, okay, I'm gonna open the PowerPoint. Okay, again, just to know that I'm focusing and mostly using Indigenous Guardians Program as a template, but these are very general areas. So it can be for any application that you have in mind or any idea that you have. So these information, I found it through their website, their application form, the guideline that they provide, some question and answer that has been asked, can they provide again in their website. So, and that's the same for any funding that you apply for. So it's very important to read their website, their guidelines, and their forms very carefully, because there are sometimes these little words that you think, it's not important, but that might change the entire decision of, do you even want to apply for this funding, or does this even worth all your efforts? Because so many times with this funding, you put a lot of time, and time is a resource, right? So time is actually what you put in. It might be a funding, it might be free, but what you put in is your own time. And then it either you're not eligible for it, or it's like so competitive, or it's just not like, it's not that much money that worth all the time that you have to put into it. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider based on your individual, style. Like if you have if you're working in this area specifically, then you might have more time. But there are other things always in life that have an impact on how you make decision if you want to apply or not apply. So usually some of this information, let's say you found your funding source, or something that's potentially your funding source. So now, what we're looking for in that application. So usually application forms and guidelines provide an overview, as we went through in the previous session. For example, for Indigenous Guardians, there are a few things they mention. I extract kind of this information out of different resources they provided. So it's kind of been summarized a bit, but that's maybe something that you have to do for any funding you apply. So you have to kind of figure out what are those key points that you need to pay attention to when you want to decide you want to apply for this funding or not. So for example, in Indigenous Guardians, so their overview, they explain that they are funding maximum 60,000 per year for total 10 projects nationally. So that what this tells me is this is a very competitive project. And based on other information that they provide, they would have 2 or 3 maximum in the highest number that they provided funding, 2 or 3 funding per province. So it's something to consider when you look for funding. How much is there and how competitive that is. And then somewhere along that overview part, they mentioned that, I found this, I think, in the application form, they mentioned that they are looking for a long-term project. So however, they only fund it for a year, but they're mostly funding projects that have that long-term in mind. So, and they can build a business out of that. So that's something, again, to remember. So they're looking for ideas that could be expanded to more business-like opportunities and to fund your project. So, and then they also mentioned that this is a Tier 1 First Nations Guardian new initiative. So it's only for First Nations, and the other two fundings has been already allocated for Métis and Inuit. So again, to see that and to be aware of that. Now, I sent a package to Emily before that had the application forms for both this funding and Indigenous Peoples Resilience Fund, the budget, the work plan, and also kind of like a handout of this presentation. So I'm wondering if everybody received that. Okay, I'm trying to find out how I can see the chat while I'm screen sharing. All right, let me see. Yeah, I don't think I can reach the chats right now. So other than I stop screen sharing.
I can tell you how to do it if you like. It's if you go to the top of where the screen share is.
Right.
There's a little arrow on the side and it has a little drop-down menu.
Okay.
You see it should have chat right at the top.
Yes, I found it. Thank
you.
It
took me a while to find it too.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, all right. Just gonna, yes, the documents has been received, so that's good. So what you're seeing here is, again, the information that I extracted from the application form and the guidelines and the website itself. Now the package, the entire package is also shared in our website. So if in case you want to go over, and see like the guidelines and download those information, you can always do that too. So, and then what is the scope, or what does this funding for? What do they fund? So there is a part, again, in every funding that you want to apply for, they explain what is this for and what is the scope of this funding. And again, this is a very important part because that's where you match your need or your idea with this funding. So does this even fund what I'm looking for? So for example, so in this case, they support First Nations communities for on-the-ground, community-based stewardship initiatives to exercise their rights and responsibilities to the land, waters, and ice of their traditional territories. So again, it's important to just look at those little words. So it's not just the land, but it can be water, it could be ice. And, does this even match with your idea? Okay. Now I'm gonna go to the next page. I have so many screens here. It takes me a while. Okay, so, and then they also explain what Tier 1 First Nation Guardians new initiative is all about. So, how you can be considered for this Tier 1, because they used to have Tier 1, 2, and 3, and 2 and 3 was more for larger projects and long-term projects, which is already filled and the funding is already been allocated. But then for this specific funding, what do they mean by the initiative and new? So what they mean is you don't have any paid staff that is dedicated to any Guardians initiative. And then you might have active members or you might not have active member on your traditional lands. And you don't have any formal way of monitoring your ecology, social, economy, or cultural indicators of your lands and waters and ice. So you might have some, informal ways, but you don't have like a system in place to do that. So also you don't have any formal mechanism to provide information, to that knowledge, to transfer the knowledge around, what's going on your lands and water and ice into the decision making of your community. So there's so many things might be going on in your First Nation community, but you don't have any way to formally actually record those, monitor those, and make decision based on those. So that's what Tier 1 is all about. And again, to be aware that you have to fit within this. If you have already certain programs, you have formal mechanisms, then you can't be applying for this funding. And again, you know, it's the funding has been allocated, but it doesn't mean that for long-term ones, but it doesn't mean that, you know, you there won't come again. So a lot of these fundings have like a 5-year or 10 years time, so that they have to spend the money that they have. And then when the money finishes, you know, then again, there will be another round that they apply for. And then you always have to be kind of in touch with their website. And I know that for this specific fundings, they have an email list that they update you with, you know, any future funding, if there's the next year funding coming up. So even getting in touch through the contact, you know, information that's in the website always helps. So I've had always very helpful comments on the questions I had, very, very good replies. And the most important is, like, I've always been included in those, you know, email list. So I always get those deadlines there. Oh, you know, this already is there. So like for this year, for the Guardians program, there was a difference. First, the funding reduced, and then they usually open this funding, I think around September or even later, and then they decide by early January. So I mean, the due date is early January, not the decision, but the due date. But this year they actually have it earlier. So if I wasn't in the email list, I probably would never even like know that. So yeah, so just to keep in mind that have those relationships, have those connections, and they always, you know, they always will be helpful. So, all right, so I'm gonna go through some of the questions, see what comments we have. One question. If our community has a charity number and we want to offer land-based cultural camps, can we use their number? If in the funding that you're applying for, they're looking for, you know, the eligibility is for organizations that are non-for-profit and they're looking for charity number, yes, you can definitely do that. You always can actually, even if you are in a community and you can apply through your, you might be able to apply through a few different channels. You might be able to apply through the government, through the you know, chief and council. You can apply through non-for-profit, like to your school, through health centers. These are usually non-for-profit organization, and they have charity numbers. So yeah, so this is based on, so if you have those options, it's all about what this funding is for and what are they funding. So if it's more related to, if you're applying through school and they're actually, it's more education related, it's better to apply through a school. If it's health related, it's better to apply through your, you know, your health organization. So, but if it's more related to a community level work, you know, then I believe that it's better to go through your, you know, your chief and council. Okay. I think it's also important to note, okay. It's important to note that some funders sometimes need to spend their funding dollars before year end. Very good point. So there seems to be times of the year that can be more advantageous. That's exactly true. There are times when last minute funding opportunities arise. That's right. Such as this COVID, you know, right now we're during this pandemic, you know, we have a lot of emergency funds that are coming. And, you know, again, this is being creative and even like using the word like emergency fund. And some organization, even if there is no emergency, they have, you know, they have been allocated certain amount of money and they have to spend it, otherwise they lose it by certain time of this year. So yeah, so you're Bentley, you're right, and thanks for, you know, thanks for mentioning that. And then corrections often has last minute opportunities. Thanks, I didn't know that. So yeah, something to keep in mind. Okay, and then, all right. Is Leslie here? Do you have a question? I just got a comment that you have a question. No? Everybody's so quiet. Do you even hear me? I feel like I'm in this like lonely, quiet room.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, so okay, I'll move on. So let me know if you have a question. There is a question about how and where do you apply for a charitable number. So in each province you are, there is company's office in every province. So for example, I have a corporation, so I had to go and register it through Manitoba companies, which is, I think, part of the provincial government. So when you go there, based on what you want, so if you want a charity number, you have to be a non-for-profit. So you have to have an organization first that is non-for-profit, and then when you go there and fill out the forms, you have to mention you're also wanting a charitable number. There are certain fees to register a company and get a charitable number, but usually for non-for-profits, those fees are very small. I don't remember right now, but they're, I think, under $50. So yeah, so it's not a very difficult process, but you have to qualify for it, and you have to have, the capacity that you have to show that you have the capacity to be an organization, a non-for-profit organization that then you can receive a charity number. Like my corporation is for-profit, so I'm not really personally familiar of doing that, and if there's any other conditions, but you can find those information in company's office in Manitoba, and I'm sure in every other province, and you can also get in touch with them. Okay, I think Emily shared some files. Darlene says that both provincial and federal funding is available for COVID-19, mental health, staff job funding, and such. So thanks a lot. Yeah. I think like if you search emergency fund, and if you even specifically look at Indigenous, or based on what type of organization are from, you can see a lot of different fundings are available right now. So, all right. So any link to charity registration, I can send you those information later, Sandy, because I have to go and Google it right now. So we don't have enough time, but for sure, like there is a link. Just share if you can even search company's office and then go to registering a non-for-profit organization or company. Then they'll give you some information. If you need more, you can always get in touch with them if you are in Manitoba. So, okay. So, all right. So the next part that is really important when you look at the documents for funding is eligibility. So we were all talking about that right now. So if you're not eligible for funding, you can't apply. So there's no way. So you put all this time and energy, and then it doesn't work out. So for example, in Guardians program, eligible applicants are First Nations, communities, nations, governments, and or representative organizations. So again, what representative organizations are, those are the ones that have the capacity to deliver this funding, and they are somehow related to the governance in the community, which is chief and council. So, and then some sometimes the website, sometimes in other forms, you can find the eligible expenditure. So what actually you can use this money for. So yeah, so like if you have an idea and you want to use this money for certain activity that is not within the scope of this funding, then they won't fund you because they can see that from your application. And usually that matches with your, eligible activities. For example, let me see, I think I can actually, I summarized some of those eligibilities. Yes. So for Guardians program, these are some of the eligible activities. Some are research related, survey related, monitoring, collection and gathering the information, or traditional knowledge, training, capacity building, and other types that are related more to a species, to habitat restoration and management. So they have a list there. And usually when you have an activity or an idea in mind, then, you have to match that with these activities and see that this is within that eligibility or not. And then later on, you have to match this with your with your budget or your expenditure. So if you don't show that, if you don't have that flow within your application, there is no way you can reach this funding. And then you have to also kind of show that in your budget. So work plan, budget, activities, they're kind of all related. And this all goes back to the eligibility and your idea. What do you want? And then by here, like around, then you get to this point of like the application, then you would know, is this the funding I want to apply for or no? I want to leave it and go put my time and energy into something else. So I'd like to hear from some of you. So is there any of you that want to apply for this funding? Well, you can always let me know. I'm gonna move on to the next part. And then, okay, let's say you decided, yeah.
I have a question, Maya.
Sure.
For this funding, is it specific to Manitoba?
No, it's for all First Nations across Turtle Island, Canada actually, not Turtle Island.
And the U.S.?
No, just Canada.
Turtle Island is the U.S.
Yeah, I know. I like Turtle Island word, and I don't sometimes use Canada as often, so I'm kind of used to that. No, it's all national. It's a national funding only for First Nations communities.
Okay. As a treaty organization, is that something that we could apply for? On behalf of the First Nations communities.
Oh yes, you can. So I'm not very aware of those structures. So a treaty organization is actually a entire communities that fit within a treaty. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yes.
We work with 28 First Nations communities.
Yes. Definitely you can apply.
So I would definitely like to take a look at this.
For sure. That's what we're going to focus for this session today, and also 9th in the morning. We are going to go more in depth into this funding. And I actually believe that the more, like if you're a multiple community organization, such as Tribal Council, then you can, you have a higher chance because you're connected to a lot of other decision makings in other communities, not just one community, and they would I think they would definitely support that more. But I can just leave me a note. I can also ask them, just in case they don't necessarily. Sometimes in tier 1 they might be specific just for one community, but I can ask that. Or also you can reach out, but I definitely can ask that too. I have their contact. Just leave me a note.
I can share this with our other departments here, because we also have, because I work in health, in the health policy unit. We also have education and our territorial planning unit, which is natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
So I can forward this on to them because this would be something that would be up their alley.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Any other question, comments?
Hi, this is Jeannie. My question is, when it says Indigenous communities, does that mean specifically for the reserves, or could it be in an urban setting?
I've seen the urban setting being funded. I've seen a couple of places in Winnipeg. I have to go back to their map. Let me see if I can actually look at the map right now, because I think that's something that keeps coming up. So I'm gonna just look at the map and share it with you. They have a map of funded initiatives in their website. I'm just trying to open that and I'll share it with you. All right. Okay. I'm gonna stop share this one and share a screen. All right. So this is the map they have. Everybody can see this. This is the. Do you see the map of different projects that has been funded all across Canada? So if you go up here, they have year 1, year 2, year 3, because this has been 3 years already that they're accepting applications. So here, when you go down, this is, I believe, year 1. I'm gonna double check. So you can actually click on each, location here, and they tell you where this is, what program this is, which community this is, and
Could you click on to where the Winnipeg is? Can
Yeah.
we see that what that was?
This is Métis Youth
MMF,
Boreal
okay.
Forest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you share where I can find this website on the internet?
Sure. I can share it in the comments section.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, I have to go back to my Zoom. All right. Navigating this is not very easy for me.
Okay, so is it fair to, would it be correct to think that if we approach the SCO, the Southern Chiefs Organization, would that be something and get the partner with them to do something like a youth guardian initiative? Would that be something that would be feasible?
The only concern I have right now is that you have a very short time left. So this deadline for this application is end of this month. So if you think that this is feasible for you to, apply through different organization, and you can actually bring multiple communities to it, then you can.
Okay, I actually don't think that I would be able to do that. I'm just trying to get that information. I'm trying to educate myself on looking at different funding opportunities and answering and asking the questions,
Right.
that are going to lead me to see other opportunities later on.
Yeah, sounds great. So this is where you can find some of the answers to your question, because if you look at who they funded before,
right,
and then what type of project they funded. So if you go down here, again, they have like, the names, the description, and then you can also search by location. This is year 1, but then they also have year 2 and 3. Okay, so this is year 3. Again, if you go to Manitoba, so we have Fox Lake Cree Nation that got this. So this is a community. And then, so it's not a multiple community or organization, but this is just one First
Mhm.
Nation community, which is good to know, because a lot of times when you think like this is only 2 or 3 funding per province, you might feel like, oh, you know, how can I get this for just my community when we have so many communities and organizations out there? But it's always worth to try, specifically if you have like a very strong case, you really are wanting to start monitoring and recording and researching your own you know, territory, and communicate that with other you know, members of your community. So if you really build a strong case, regardless of how low, you know, your chances, it's always good to try.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So maybe I move to the presentation again. So I'm going to stop sharing. Is there any other question? Thanks, Larry, for sharing the website. Okay, I'm going to just share the different. God, this virtual world is not easy. Oh, yeah, so screen sharing the PowerPoint. All right, so, okay, so let's say you are interested, you found your funding, and then now you're looking to how to apply. Then you have to ask for application package. You might find it in the website, you might not. Usually application package has the guidelines for that specific funding, the forms, the questions that, you know, usually either on the website or in the application package that comes through email. You can find some of the questions that have been asked, and that might actually also answer your questions. And then a budget, a work plan. I haven't seen any funding that doesn't have those two. So budget and work plan are quite critical in showing that you know what you want, and you know what you're doing, and you have the capacity to distribute this funding and do everything in a timely manner. So those are the some of the common forms that you get. For this specific program, I had to email them. So they don't have it in their website. If you go there right now, you might find the questions, frequently asked questions, but I don't think any other, even the guideline, is not in their website. So you have to email them, and they will send you the entire package in both English and French. And then deadline. Some of the applications, they have a deadline. Most of them do. Some of the some of the non-governmental ones, they don't have, or they're a little more flexible with the you know, deadlines. But for the most of the federal and provincial funding, the deadline is pretty critical. And for this specific one, they even have the time. So you have to look at what time, and if you send it after that, they don't even accept the applications after that time. And then they have also some kind of a timetable of the events or the process that's going to happen after this. For example, in this case, they say that if you are successful, they will let you know by spring, and then they send or transfer the funding in summer next year. And then you have to complete the activities by end of March 2022. So when you look at something like this, what does this tell you? It's not just, you know, okay, so we're going to send you this information by this time, but it also gives you an idea of your own work plan. Because in your work plan, you usually have to mention, you know, when, in which time, in which duration of time you're going to actually complete this activity. So, and it usually starts when the funding starts. So if they're going to give you the money, you know, let's say in summer, then you start your work plan starting in summer. So when they're not very specific, so it doesn't really matter if you start in June or August or whenever, but you have to consider that you have to start within the summertime, and then go from there and find a way that you can distribute all the funding by the end of the activities time, which is March 31st. So which is less than a year. So in less than a year, you have to actually spend this funding on those eligible activities that you got the funding for. So that's something to be aware of. All right, let's go to the next. It's going to be aware of the time. Okay. All right. So when we're talking about the idea, we usually think that an idea is like a goal that we have, right? So like we, let's say we're looking for a treatment center in our community, right? So that's our idea. So that's why we're looking for funding. But there are specific terms when you're looking at a funding application that you have to be aware of. And you have to expand your idea based on those terms and according to those terms. So some of those three terms actually that is being used a lot is goals, objectives, and outcomes. So I found this information in Guardians application. In their guidelines, they had explained the differences between goals and objectives. And I think that's really great that they did that, because this is the most confusing part and the most important part when you're actually writing a proposal. If you're not specific enough about what your idea is, and you're not so focused on that and around your idea and how to expand that to an objective and how to expect certain outcomes that comes from your ideas, then you can't really kind of write a focused, clear, proposal. So, so these are, and everything else pretty much goes around that first objective or idea that you have. So the more you spend time on building up your idea and building up towards like create an objective from your idea, the more easier the application, filling the application will be for you, and the more chance you have in getting any funding. Because otherwise you won't be focused enough and you can actually follow the flow of the application, because everything else is related to that objective. So there's a little bit of explanation on the differences between goals and objectives. So goals is very general. So we have, a plan, and we have some goals to reach that plan. A plan to reach that goal. And then when we reach that, we have certain outcomes. These are all very general. So both goal and outcome are very general terms. But when we talk about objectives, it becomes very specific. So goals are broad, and then it's the intent of or the vision that we have, and how we want to plan to get to that vision. And then, so they're non-specific, non-measurable, and then cannot be attained. So like, it's very general. So, for example, my goal is to create a safer community to create a safer environment for my community. So that is a goal. So it's non-specific, it's non-measurable, and it's not something that you can achieve right away. So it's like a general idea of what you want, and you have to plan to get to that goal. And then outcomes is also very general. So for example, if I get this funding, let's say, my goal is to create a safer environment. Let's say, so the outcome will be, if I get this funding, I would create, this and this in my community, like very general. Like, for example, I build this shelter in my community that brings more, safety and a more, a safer environment. So it's, again, like the outcomes and goals kind of related, but very general. So maybe what I would do now, because I'm going to move on to objectives, and objectives are getting a little more specific. I would like you to write down in the chat section that what is your goal, some of your goals that you have, and maybe some of the outcomes you're looking for. If you have any questions, let me know so I can kind of expand this a little further. right, I'm gonna open my chat. Where's the chat? Okay. So meanwhile, Larry is asking, what if you are non-for-profit organization and there is a charitable organization number required in funding application? I guess you can apply. If you want to apply, then you can always apply, even if it's last minute. Usually the process is really fast. So I'm gonna share a story with you. Before we register our corporation, which is a for-profit corporation, I had just like a singular business. So it's more like a just me registering a single business there. And for one of the fundings we applied, we needed to have a corporation. So we need to incorporate our business. So I had some people I was working with, but it was more kind of like a consulting work. So I didn't really need to form any larger organization. But then for this specific funding, which was quite significant, I needed to be a corporation. And I did that within 2 days. Because you really don't need much. You go to their website, there's certain information that is very general. What is your company about? What you do, your address, who is going to be in your, your corporation. And you can change a lot of those, in the future. So you don't need to necessarily have, it's not written in stone that if you, have like 3 people now, you can add this person, or you can, you can change even the structure of your organization. You can do all of that. And a lot of those are free. A lot of those changes are free. So yeah, so we actually incorporated within 2 days because the deadline for that funding was coming, and we were able to get that funding. So yeah, so you can always do that, but also you can connect to other organizations that are charitable. There are other options to it. Depends what you want to pursue. Okay. I don't have anyone commenting on the goals. You shared some of your goals with me already. Like I had a few people saying they want to have a more like a healing center. Well, that is your goal. And then your outcome would be, a more, maybe a healthier community, a safer community, more cultural inclusion within your community. You can even talk about, justice-wise, you will have like a restorative justice included in your community. These are like the outcomes that are there, but your goal is in general to start a center, a treatment center or a healing lodge in your community. Or if you're looking for a shelter, the outcome of the shelter will be a safer community and a better relationship within the community, a better mental health. There's a lot of aspects or outcomes that you can think of. And again, this is a very creative process. This is also a very individual process. So I'm reading this book by Leon Simpson now, that's Dancing on Our Turtle's Back. And one of the things that she mentions that I love is like, you live Anishinaabe life. So it's like you're learning by doing. So, and this is something that I've hardly seen in a lot of other countries I've been, where I'm from, and it's a very holistic system, and all based on relationships. So I'm not Indigenous, but I'm learning a lot from that. So I think like even your funding application is like that. You're creating your own, it's all based on your self-determination. So you're creating a space within your community for whatever needs. I don't even like to use the word needs. Whatever you feel like your community would flourish with. And then you get creative. And then if you get creative, you can actually find those sources, because there is a lot of like-minded people that might see that need is there, and then you can connect to those people and even can create something larger. So so I guess I heard from some, and then I have some comments now. So Jenny say to provide additional sustenance for Indigenous people who are shelterless and not necessarily connected to their home communities. So how do you want to provide that sustenance? So this is more like an outcome, right? So what you want to get from this funding is to provide that sustenance for your people if they are if they are shelterless, more towards your self-determination, right? And then your goal is what you are actually wanting to have a maybe more independence, more you want to have like a shelter, or you want to have a housing complex. So whatever you want to do is your goal, and then what you see that bring to your community is your outcome. So yeah, that's great. That's great. So what's to provide the necessary skills that offers a multidisciplinary approach to improve reintegration into the community that will foster stability and success, as well as providing easier access to services and supports. So Monique, can you kind of open that for me a little bit? Like, what do you want to do? What's your goal?
Well, I was thinking, like, I like, after going through my own traumas and addictions and mental health supports and having to navigate the system, and then working with the End Homelessness in Manitoba, right. I wanted to take a whole approach that includes not just traditional or Western techniques, because I found a lot of the treatment facilities, these 28-day programs don't work because they're only focused on one or two specific things that doesn't actually improve the reintegrating into the community. It's great that you've gotten sober, but what are the necessary skills that you need to continue to move forward? And that's a lot of the things that these facilities don't offer. Right. As well as the physical, looking at physical health conditions as well that impact on the mental health. And so that's kind of where I want to go with my idea.
Right. Okay, so your goal is more to have a more holistic approach to mental health, which is kind of like integrating, not just looking at one system, but having like a more holistic system of thinking, integrating like Indigenous traditional knowledge into the healing. So yeah, that's more like your goal.
Yeah, well, that, and then providing the skills that they need to be successful in the community, because they get out of treatment and then, well, what do? They have no skills to maintain that stability. So I'm like, without giving away all my ideas, it's basically making sure they have the skills to achieve success and to create that stability and hopefully break the cycles.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting because this is not the first time I hear this, and I know a lot of people are now understanding that just looking at one, just trying to resolve an issue, looking at from one, dimension without holistically looking at it is not going to work, because you can't just like have this part of process and leave the entire like that circle, right? You just have a little piece of circle that's covered, but then the entire circle is left, and then as a lot of time won't work because it's fragmented and it's not holistic. So I really like to have conversation about that with you, because I also know some resources around that around like more I know that Hollow Water First Nation, which is kind of home for me, started a process of like I think there's few books written on like how to bring one person after they have been through such and such traumas back to community, and also, you know, create those skills and build the skills, but all within the community. It all comes from you know, self-determination, and it's like all based on, you know, for in their case, Anishinaabe thought. So I can't really go so much further because like we're already 3 o'clock. So it would be great. I'd like to continue some of this conversation. So let's have maybe about 10 minutes break, and then we'll be back. Okay. Does everybody hear me? I can't see any of you, so. Do you all hear me, see me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna open the chat and all right, so maybe we go on. I see you have, I see few comments and goals and outcomes that has been shared. This will be all saved and we can always go back to it, especially in our, you know, one-on-ones later. But thanks for sharing. Please do continue to share your goals and outcomes as we are going through the presentation. So, and I'll go through those soon. So, okay, so now we're talking about objectives. So objectives are different than goals. Goals, as we said, they are like really broad. They're not specific, they're not measurable, they can't be attained. But when we are looking at objectives, objectives are, they can be kind of like summarized in 5 different specifics about objectives. So one, objectives are specific. They are measurable, they are achievable, they are realistic, and they are time bound. So I'm going to go through those one by one. So what does it mean by being a specific? A specific means, so now we have our goal, we have our idea, we have our goal. So how or what exactly we're going to do? Who is the person or the community or the organization that we are going to do this with or for? So here you become very specific on what's and who's and whom's. And then what kind of strategies you're gonna be using to, you know, to actually around your idea, around your goal, around your objective. And then it's filled with action verbs. So, you know, so the difference between this and goals again is goals doesn't have that because it's not about action. So, and then who, where, and what are there? So again, you know, who are you? Where are you wanting to do this? What you want to do, or with who you're going to do this, and for who you're going to do this, for whom you're going to do this, what is your, so you're looking at youth, you're looking at, you know, general community population, you're looking at certain age group, and then what you want to do to achieve the, you know, specifically what and which way you want to actually achieve that. So, and then it has to have like a clear result. So when you actually do all these things, you will have this certain result coming out of, you know, all the process that you went through. So doing things with this group, for this group, coming for this with the results, specific results and clear outcomes that, you know, that, and you can show that in your application that you are already aware of all those specifics when you're applying for funding. So here you're actually expanding your idea to goals, then you're expanding your goals into objectives. And again, this is a very creative process. It's a very individual process. I mean, individual in a way that is for your own communities, for your own organization. And it's always good to kind of have brainstorming, having those, circles and figure out like who else is wanting to do this, and then bring all those together and put it into actionable verbs and very specific hows of the process of how you're going to do this and what kind of results you're looking for. So that's one specific. Then it has to be measurable. So measurable, well, measures, it works with numbers, comparisons, quantities, like it can also be there is like this quantitative and qualitative, so it not necessarily need to be numbers, but there will be some type of measurement. It's like a survey being done, and then you're looking at the result of that survey. So you might not deal with numbers per se, but you're looking at data, and this might be a kind of more like a social type of data, but it's measurable somehow within those tools that we have for analyzing those data. So that's what measurable means: how much, how many, and then also kind of like measuring your accomplishment. How I would know if it's accomplished. Does it have to reach a certain number? Is it like a certain qualities that I'm looking for in my community that I can actually show what those qualities are? And then if certain things change, if the numbers change, if those qualities changed, if, for example, we have improvement in mental health after this project, how do you want to actually measure that? How do you know that the general health or the mental health of the community has been improved? So finding those tools and put it within your objective. And then how do you want to obtain that? So that's what measurable means. Then it has to be achievable. So when we're talking about achievable, we always also talking about within the funding, within the amount of funding that we have, we want to achieve this. So we have to kind of have that in mind, that we have this, time, and then we have, this much money, and within those, we want to achieve our goals. So it has to be achievable. So it means that the time period, the resources we have, the community that we are in, the relationships that we have, how we want to manage this project, this is going to happen within this timetable. So the time there is very important. So that goes through your work plan. So when you actually think about all those, you're creating your work plan as well. You're also creating your resources. Who is going to be there with you while you're doing this project? You are going to allocate time, and you're also going to allocate money to different aspects of your project. So this also will be your budget. So that's why building an objective and really give it enough time will make everything else easier in your application. And then you also have to be aware of your limitations. So if you kind of oversell your idea, or you want to achieve a lot in a really short time with a really minimum amount of funding, then it's not doable, it's not feasible. And even having that in your application have a negative impact than a positive impact. So, and one of the other things is, like, if this project or this type of projects or similar ones has been done before in your community, in your organization, and that has been done successfully. So if you already have not a very good history in terms of you get fundings, but you can't really follow through, you can't really submit certain things on time, you can't really spend the money in the areas that you said you'll spend. So, and you want to apply again with the same organization, with the same type of funding, either government or non-government, then it would definitely have a negative impact on that. So it's really important to be realistic. So, which is our next. So look at your resources and then be realistic. It doesn't, you don't need to necessarily do a lot. Sometimes, less is more, as we say. So do less, but being focused and knowing like what you want and having those resources to achieve that. So and considering the time frame when you're talking or thinking about all these aspects. And then also, again, what your history is. Have you had accomplishments that are similar? They definitely have a positive impact on even how you write your own proposal. And then that would be reflected, and then that would increase your chances of getting funding. And then, again, like resources, you have to look at your conditions. Do you have even the environment to achieve these goals? Do you have enough resources? Even it could be human resources, it could be, I don't like the word natural resources, but any other type of resource, even if it's just administrative stuff. And do you have those, or you want to ask for, and you make sure that you're, integrating that into your project. So, and then the last is the time frame. We talk about this. It means like you have a defined timeline, and then exactly when you're going to achieve what, and how you want to achieve that. And then if there is, usually in your when you look at your work plan, you have to say 2 months for this part of the project, 1 month for this part of the project. So you have to, in most of the funding applications, you have to actually talk about the deadlines that you want to achieve those parts of your project. So then you have to always have that in mind when you are filling up your application. So clear objectives means clear work plan and means clear outcomes. So that's why this part, in my opinion, with my experience, is the most important part, in writing and going through the rest of your application. So, okay, with that, let me see. Okay, so I have this little kind of exercise here. So please, I guess you have the handout, so you can fill out your handouts looking at by what time, who, like organization, community, or what, doing what, and then include a measurement. So, okay, so when, who, doing what, measuring what, and then we'll have, so, and then how and why these results. Okay, am I clear? So how you're going to achieve what you want, why you want to achieve it, and then have a certain type of measurable results that you're looking for. So please do this exercise, and I'd like to see some of those if possible. Emily, can you help me or how can I see all the participants? I can't see anyone now.
Yeah, I can just stop your screen sharing here, and then
okay.
Yeah, and then you'll be able to see everyone if you click gallery view.
Okay.
But no one's cameras are on.
No. Is anyone even here? Is anyone here?
Oh, there's some folks here.
Okay, good.
We got a thumbs up. Also, awesome.
Okay.
Yay!
Lots of stuff happening in the chat too.
So let me know when, let's give this like couple of minutes and then just let me know what you've written. I hydrate myself a bit. Irene says that the camera has been stopped.
I'll see if I can help her out there.
Okay, meanwhile, I can read these. Sandy says, for language speakers, I use and think Cree first and then write them into general statements, goals, then elaborate statements, objectives. My Cree mind works better for me when it comes to conceiving concepts. My Western mind is great for writing statements. I love that, Sandy. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and you know, speaking within the culture and within the language, that's great. That's the experience I don't have. Irene says to create a bus pass system for Norway House, Cree Nation. Okay. Kimberly says to maximize traditional knowledge and practices by immersion, teaching and learning traditional women's and men's roles within our community by creating a safe space. Oh my God, these are great. These are all great ideas. I'm learning a lot. To increase the safety of our vulnerable citizens in the community, outcome, create a comprehensive pandemic response plan, warm space for houseless, homeless population for the coming winter. So which community are you from? May I ask, Altia? Are you here? Sandy, using knowledge.
Dauphin.
Okay.
Dauphin,
yeah.
Manitoba.
Dauphin, Manitoba. Thanks for sharing your goal. And then Kim says we need continuum of care, no gaps, and care that meets the needs of people accessing treatments. All right. So I'll definitely read this more during the weekend, but if anyone has their objectives ready to share. Anyone? No? All right, we can always do it. And if you can send it later through the chat, or, you know, you have my email, you can email me or share it in the next session. We can always do that too. All right, so I'm gonna, Sandy, were you saying something? I'm gonna share the PowerPoint again. We have half an hour left. I might not have enough time to finish everything today, but let's see. All right. Okay, so far we talk about objectives, and let's assume that we worked on objectives and we have a clear objective and outcome in mind. So what are the other important areas that you know, we see in the application and we have to figure out either for Guardians or for other applications? Again, I'm using format for Guardians. Not all the application needs like the governance section, for example, but some like talking about project management. And it's kind of similar in some ways because like when you're talking about governance, you're wanting to see that you have, you know, the authority or ways to engage with the community. So you might have those ways to engage with community in a lot of other ways. So some fundings specifically for Guardians, they are very cost sensitive about the governance piece. But again, like, you know, there are lots of other fundings that are not, but still they want to make sure that, the project could be managed and the funding can be distributed properly, and the communication and specifically in these days, having the cultural aspect, having the knowledge transfer from knowledge holders of the community to youth, or have that included in your in your application. So I'm using again that template, but you can kind of modify when you have your own funding that you're looking for. You can modify it based on what they're looking for. So governance in general means like how the organization that you're in or nation is already taking care of the organization or the nation in general. In this case, land, water, ice, animal, plants. And then it also shows expression of authority. So, there are laws in place, there's policies in place, the membership is already defined, and then the map of lands are already clear. So if you're thinking about Guardians program, you have to have that aspect into your application. And then it also shows that you can engage with youth in your community. You can support Indigenous knowledge transfer, working with knowledge keepers. And then also you can see what the risks and the ways to mitigate those are. So you definitely need that network there and that relationships there with your community and or within your organization. And also have a vision of success. So like when or how is your project is successful, and actually you can communicate different aspects of the project with your community or with your organization. And then other part is the capacity. So do you have the capacity to actually do this project? So capacity means, you are able to actually do this. So if you're one individual in the community with no connection to anyone else, and you have a project in mind, you have an idea, you definitely can apply for fundings that match with an individual, ideas, or if you're looking for like a business ideas that you have, but this is not where you apply, because this funding specifically is looking for the capacity and showing that the community and or the organization successfully had done other projects, activities that can support the initiative. So like it is around the initiative's scope. And then you can also have the opportunity to increase your capacity. So you have that connection to your community and organization. And also any kind of in-kind support, you have in-kind support in place. So what in-kind means, which you will see in a lot of budgets, what it means that you have enough resources that you can bring in. For example, you have an office and you can print certain things. So your administrative expenses would be covered by your own, printing machine, or you have certain people that are already working in your organization in certain areas. Look at like mental health of your community. So their time, or if you're doing interviews for this project, they can actually do it within the organization as an in-kind support without, asking for funding from Guardians in this case. And then you can also see the need, and you can identify the need that you have for the Guardians initiative. And you have to be able to communicate that. So again, this needs a larger communication and network and relationships that you have within your community and organization. And, in some cases, depends on what you're applying for, what the species of concern are, or what areas of concern are in terms of like water, land, animal, plants that you are wanting to work on and you want to focus on project on. So that's what capacity means. And then looking at cultural inclusion, So this funding is specifically looking at that. There's a lot of fundings right now that are either looking or starting to look at, the importance of having, if this is something for your project, it has to come within and from your own community and from and within your own culture. Because me as a non-Indigenous, I don't have any idea about certain things, a history, what is going on in your community. And if I come in and say, hey, let's do this, then I'm not really doing it right. So it has to come from within your community and organization, and it is what the self-determination will be. So a lot of these fundings, hopefully more in the future, will look at that cultural inclusion and having not even cultural inclusion, but more like culturally based. It comes from your own culture. So in this case, they want to demonstrate that there is that effort that you're making. You're trying to bring the knowledge holders in, your own language in. You're trying to revitalize certain aspects of the culture. So, and depends to what you're looking for in terms of the type of funding you're looking for. This might be in there or not, the cultural inclusion part. But as I said, it's getting more and more. And I think it's very important, as personally, that they have that. And then looking at community support and engagement. So this can also be presented in a different way. It can be like, how do you want to manage your project? Again, depends to what type of funding you're applying. You'll have to show that your community or people you're working with have the capacity and have the support to work with you together on this project. So, and you have to demonstrate that somehow. For example, you're wanting to have a land-based training for youth or for the school. Then you have to show that the school is on board with you on this. Or you're looking at health, so you can always work with your health department and work with people that are impacted, or you're looking for funding for them, and you have to show that you are having you have that network, you have that engagement. And then this specific funding wants letter of support, and the letter of support can be from chief and council, but I think like there might be other also support letters. If you're working with a with a school or health center, you can always also have their support letter. So in some cases, I've seen that if you you are not able to get the chief and council or BCR ban and council resolution on time, and you have support letters that shows you have that engagement and capacity within the community, they still can get funding. And not all funding also look for that support. It depends. In this case, this is quite important. And then you can also show that you can expand your community support. So you have that capacity within your organization and within your community. So, any questions? No? Okay, we have 20 minutes, so I'm gonna go 5 more minutes, and then we're gonna have a little round table around what we've discussed so far. And I leave the couple of more slides for next session on Monday morning, November 9th. So one of the other aspects that is important when you're looking at your your application is how many partners you have. It's always great if you have other fundings that you are working with, like other fundings in that certain project, other funders, other matching funds. So I think I haven't seen any funding application that doesn't value that. A lot of them don't want that, but especially if there are small fundings, but pretty much every funding application that I filled, they have that aspect within it. They might not even say it, but if you show that for this project, I already have these partners that funded us or are going to fund us this much, and show that with enough, proof or letters, then they would definitely increase your, chance to apply for that funding. So, those partners could be other federal, provincial, local governments fundings. It could be industry partners or private sector. It could be other nations or other groups. It could be foundations, could be non-governmental sources, and also a university, so academic institution, especially if you're looking at research and doing survey. And I believe that's one of the places that you can focus on, because I myself seen a lot of those partnerships happening between academic institutions, communities, and organization, and also federal or provincial governments. All right, so I'm just gonna see. All right, so we have the budget and also the timeline or work plan. It could be, those are both terms that could be used. And there are examples that they are provided in their application package, that what actually a budget could mean and how you can fill out your budget as well as your work plan. So what is the you're looking for? So like I put one of these examples here, but because these two are really important, I'm wanting to go through this in the next session in a more, maybe in the beginning of the session before we start. I'm just gonna kind of go through it quickly for 1 or 2 minutes, but this is not gonna be it. It's just to see what budget is in general. So I'm gonna see if I have that open. I do have the budget open in Excel sheet. So I'm gonna just share that. Stop sharing this. And sharing the, all right. Okay, so they had this both in PDF and Excel sheet. And I'm trying to make this a little larger. Let's see. Okay, so usually a budget has different, it's usually in Excel form because then you can fill it and you can add it automatically, or it has, well, it's way easier to fill it in Excel sheet other than other kind of formats. There are different categories that they put here. Again, when we were talking about eligibility, they had a part called eligible expenditure. So that's where actually you can put whatever you're looking for within that eligibility in here. So the categories, so they have already those categories for this specific funding. So like, is it salary, or is it like goes under travel category? There are some fundings that don't have those categories. So it's up to you to kind of create that category and then describe what it is and then how much it is. So, and then you see other parts such as Guardian Fund, other funds in kind, and then our sources confirm, and a breakdown of other funding. So Guardian Fund is what you're looking for from Guardians Program to fund you for, what other funds you have in place, how much. In kind is through your own government or institution, or, it can be some of the in-kinds. I have never seen an in-kind being like any kind of number in it. It's more like you have to kind of guess a number. Like, for example, you are, as I said, you're working in this organization and you are contributing your time to this, and how much you think that would be, in terms of numbers. And then are there, these sources that you're saying you have as funding, are they confirmed or not? So there's a lot of times that they're not confirmed and you just applied for it, but even showing that you are applying for other fundings would have an impact on your application. So sometimes, like, I've been applying for 3 different fundings, like simultaneously sometimes, and I see that, you know, 2 of them are not confirmed, but still I do prove that, you know, I have been doing this. And if it gets confirmed, that is, sometimes they want you to show that you know where you want to spend that money to. So yeah, so this is just an overall view of the budget. We'll discuss this further on Monday. And then let's see if I have, and I stop sharing this, and I'll share the work plan. Okay, this is the budget and this is the work plan. All right, so oh, this is the budget, I guess. Again, sorry. Thought this is the work plan. Are you seeing the work plan or the budget? Is anyone awake?
We're seeing the work plan, I think.
That's the work
Okay,
plan.
okay, on my okay, I'm gonna just go on my Zoom because I don't, for some reason, I see budget only here. But okay, doesn't matter. I'm gonna open my work plan, match it with you. Okay. So now is it larger? You can see that larger?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so this is again an example of a work plan. So here you see what why we had to focus so much on objectives, because it also gives us everything we need about like work plan and how we're going to do our project and when and in, you know, what kind of a timing you're looking at. So that's exactly what work plan is. So you have different tasks that you want to do during your project. Then you have to identify what those tasks are. Again, if you had like a very clear objective, in this case, they have really interesting examples. So you want to figure out what are the concerns around the fish and waters in your community is, and then how you want to, you know, what kind of activities you're going to do. So you want to gather information from elders and knowledge keepers. When you're going to start this, when you're going to end this, you'll hear it's about 2 months that they allocated here for doing this specific activity. And then they have also kind of marked those 2 months here, you know, within the timeline that you have for this specific project. Again, they consider starting in April and ending in March. However, it might be, so they put it within a 1 year, but sometimes it goes shorter. I've had few experiences that even in this case, they say that the money will be allocated in summer and then you have to spend it by March. But it doesn't matter. If they put like a 1 year there, it means that you can modify those dates on those times, you know, later on. But, you know, they want to see that you're realistic in the time and, you know, in the kind of like a length of time that you put there. All right, so I'm going to stop here because we have 10 minutes left, and I'm going to explain again this further later. And I'd like to hear from you more now. See if there are, first, you had some expectations when you came to these workshops. Do you think those expectations were met or will be met? Can you share some of your insights? Okay, there are certain questions I'm looking at right now. Sandy asks, when it comes to applying on behalf of a nation, what data is usually required or nice to include to enhance consideration? So the data that you're looking to, I guess you're talking about collecting data, right? It has to be within the eligibility of that funding. So if this is looking at water and land and anything related to your community map, then it has to be data related to those areas. And they have those activities listed as well. So you look at those activities and make sure that whatever data you're looking at, for example, you might want to look at like traditional knowledge around certain aspects, like let's give an example that what is the traditional knowledge around fish species that we have in our community, like what they have been seeing from a long time ago, let's say in this case, before hydro came and after hydro came, and how that has been impacting or changing during time, talking to your knowledge holders. So that is one of the areas that fit within this funding because it talks about indigenous or traditional knowledge, cultural inclusion, but also it talks about protecting and the guardianship and stewardship of your land and water. So it's again being creative, looking at what you want and match it with what this program funding and what you're eligible for. Okay, I'm going over the questions. Okay, it's good to see that you got better focus of what I envisioned. Beneficial. I can't wait until next week. Thanks so much. I'm happy that it helped. I think okay, great. Next step to consider. Okay. I came to have exposure to the process, and you have covered that. Thanks, Sherry. Any suggestions? Any ways to improve it? Please criticize me. I'm educated in Western system, and I've been always criticized through the entire system. So I like to hear those criticisms so I can be, improving myself as part of the system. I'm excited to meet with you one-on-one. Me too. Just to know that we have to see how many people are attending in those one-on-ones, and based on the number of people and the time that we have, we are gonna kind of match, depends on the number, match 1 or 2 or 3 of you with one facilitator. So I don't, and you will see some of those, facilitators in the next workshops. So I'm not 100% sure like how this works, but maybe do you want to explain this a little more, Emily, how the one-on-ones work? Like, is that like they have to book a session for the entire day, or is it just for an hour? How this works?
I don't know that we've fully decided that process yet. I think that was still in discussion. I think it was depending on how many people end up going through the whole process and want to be a part of the one-on-one. Okay. I think like the entire process is based on appointments, or like for that 2 days I guess for November 20th and 23rd, we won't have any workshops as much as I know, but this might change. We are still, looking at what you're suggesting, and we are wanting to actually change based on our feedback. So like, you can always share what you think, like based on what we have right now is one-on-ones on, I guess it's on November 13th, we will have one-on-ones, and it's mostly focused on guardians. But if you have, again, other applications, you definitely can bring in. Guardians has a deadline. That's why we are trying to kind of focus on that. So if you want to apply for it, you reach that deadline. And then between 13th to 20th of November, you will have time to finish your application after, we work on it together. And then you will have like, you need to get some
information such as, you need BCR letter, you need also map of the area that you're wanting to get the funding for. So you collect all the application package and what is needed. And then on those 2 days, 20th and 23rd, we are going to more focus on how to submit, if there is anything missing. And it's a one-on-one. Yeah, so that's the whole process. But if you feel like you want anything else covered or you want any changes, just let us know. Okay, there are some comments coming. Lots of clarifications. Great. Thanks, Sandy. I'm excited to meet with you. Okay. Maybe give some example of what a specific goal is, objective and a SMART measure. Sure, I would include maybe few of the objectives from the previous fundings that have those in, and then maybe we can discuss that again in the next session. I would make a note of that. Yeah, maybe also we can do that in the next one. So look at your SMART objectives and develop that while you have time. And then Sandy says some proposals may include conceptual diagram, 4 quadrants, any samples, try to get on video, no success, maybe the next one. Okay, Sandy cannot connect. Emily, Sandy Robinson, do you want to try that? Okay, so some proposals. Can you, Sandy, give me an example? Can you because diagrams can be, well, they are like part of Excel. Like you can actually create a diagram. What they are is just more kind of fancy way of showing your, either your measurements or your data, your results. And it can be created for any set of data or, so it can be a lot of different things. Can you give me an example? Maybe send it to me right now and then we talk about it in the future because we're getting close to 4 o'clock. Better understanding of funding requirements. Is that, Brian, is that what you want to know more? Like better understanding of funding requirements. Can you a little bit elaborate that? So what do you want me to include? Or is that what you got from these workshops? I'm not very clear. Let me know. All right. Still here for the next 2 minutes. So let me know if there is anything else you want to talk about. Emily, did I miss anything in terms of questions, chat?
I don't think so at this point. I think you've fairly well answered everything. I'm just going to check here. I think so.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, so I hope to see you all back again on Monday, November 9th. And we can definitely answer some of the questions that left and also go more in depth into Guardian's proposal, provide some more examples of funded projects. And then in the afternoon, we will go more in depth into non-governmental fundings, such as Indigenous Peoples Resilience Fund. And I believe Asfia Kamal will be presenting that. They got the funding for one of the communities here in Manitoba recently. So she has a lot of experience working with non-governmental organizations. And then possibly if we can bring someone from those communities to see how those fundings has impacted, their communities in what type of impacts it had and how they see this funding going in the future. So thank you so much. It was great to have you all, and definitely email me if you have any more questions, concerns. or you need more clarifications. Thanks so much.